There's a book that I bought the rights to, and I want to turn it into a movie. And I optioned the right for 2 months, for 2 years in March of last year, before October 7th. After October 7th, I bought the permanent right. That book is called The Muslim and the Jew. And it is written by an author called Ronen Steinke. I read an article about this book in 2016, and I chased that book for rights for 7 years. I didn't have that much money, but I wanted that book. And that book was translated into English called Anna and Dr. Helmy. And that book tells the incredible story under Nazi Germany, where Arabs went.
What's up, everybody? Jackson here, and this Bassem Youssef and Lex Fridman conversation covers a lot of difficult ground, from the Israeli-Palestinian conflict's history to a genuinely remarkable, little-known historical story about an Egyptian doctor who hid Jewish families in Nazi Berlin. What I want to focus on today is the core critique Youssef raises about both sides need better leaders framing, and whether that framing obscures more than it reveals given the actual power imbalance on the ground. I also want to check the specific statistics cited about child detention, because those are serious, checkable claims. Stick with me, get that like in, get subscribed, because we take contested claims seriously here. Now let's get into it.
But if you look globally,
But do they have the same kind of weapons that the Israeli have?
so literally power, no, there's a major asymmetry of literal power.
Some money to their leaders? Does that make any difference? I mean, and also when you say Palestinian Authority, which authority are you talking about? Hamas, or the Palestinian Authority who has been kind of a domesticated, kind of like a puppy for the Palestinians, who basically have been an informant for on their own people? And this is the thing also that kind of like really pissed me off when I was hearing the thing about these things. Like Hamas. Like, we have Netanyahu on tape confessing that he supported Hamas, gave him money in order to cause factions in between the Palestinians. So it's just like, it doesn't make, you just told me this. You just told me Netanyahu supports Hamas. Like, but Hamas, like what?
I mean, to which degree does Netanyahu represent the Israeli people is a real question.
To which point does Trump or Biden represent the American people?
And to which degree does Hamas represent the Palestinian people?
Does none of these represent it, but who have the power in order to make the decisions? It really comes down to that.
Well, who does have the power? You're giving a lot of power to Israel.
Yeah.
But the Arab League...
What should Hamas do? What do you think we should Hamas do?
Continue doing what a charter says, which is trying to destroy Israel. And the role of the Palestinian people is to overthrow Hamas and get a more moderate leadership, probably. And the role of the Israeli people is to vote out this right-wing government and elect a more moderate leader so that there's a chance at peace with two moderate leaders.
So before Hamas even got to control 2006 Gaza, there was Ariel Sharon in 2000. And we all know what happened. And Ariel Sharon kind of like came up with this amazing policy of like breaking people's kids' bones in the Intifada. So Barak was also like, I mean, which one is moderate? I mean, the thing is, Hamas is a product of what happened. I mean, we can, if there was no apartheid in South Africa, there would be no NFC. There will be no Nelson Mandela. If there were no Nazis in Paris, there would be no French resistance. And I'm not saying that. And again, I'm not. I don't want to be put in a position to defend Hamas or anybody, because you know what that entails. But those are like Hamas. Again, not defending them. They went into October 7th. What was their why did they did that? Like, release our hostages, the people in prison, because if you're talking about people who were kidnapped, Israel kidnaps people every single day. And when they had the first exchange on November 4th, Israel released 400 people, 3/4 of them were women and children. Why are those people in prison? There's 1 in 4 kids that are imprisoned that stay in solitary confinement, which is by international law a form of torture. And you're putting kids through that.
Is it possible? So first of all, ceasefire,
Yes.
and longer term, is it possible for Arab states and the United States to get together and with power through diplomacy enforce a solution?
It's a very, very ideal solution, but you know, and I know, that the Arab states don't really have the power. All of the powers are in the hands of
I
America.
think they have the power. See, I think they have the power. I don't.
Maybe they don't want to use it.
They don't want. Well,
Maybe
that's
they don't. Maybe they
because there's a benefit. Like
Maybe there's a benefit.
the dark sense I have is that a lot of people win from the suffering that Palestinians are going through because they can point to that and distract from
definitely
corruption in their own states. And then obviously Iran can benefit also from the same kind of dynamic, distracting from the authoritarian nature of their regime.
Definitely, but what is the core of the problem here? Is it the Arab states using the suffering, or the suffering itself? And the suffering comes from people being displaced, their homes were taken away. There are 7 million Palestinians in diaspora. 7 million. 7 million went out there, and now they're living in Canada and America and Europe. They had homes there they cannot go back to. 1.7 million people of the people in Gaza don't belong in Gaza. They were pushed from other places. The piecemeal thing of people are being, in Germany, I'm going to shift gear a little bit. It's going to be a little bit of fun. There is a book that I bought the rights to, and I want to turn it into a movie. Mm-hmm. And I optioned the right for 2 months, for 2 years in March of last year, before October 7th. After October 7th, I bought the permanent right. Mm-hmm. That book is called The Muslim and the Jew. And it is written by an author called Ronen Steinke. I read an article about this book in 2016. And I chased that book for rights for 7 years. I didn't have that much money, but I wanted that book. And that book was translated into English called Anna and Dr. Helmy. And that book tells the incredible story under Nazi Germany, where Arabs went in droves to Berlin in the 1920s after the First World War in the Weimar Republic. And they became doctors and engineers and journalists for 2 reasons. Number one, it was dirt cheap. Very cheap because of the inflation. And 2, a lot of the Arab nationalists didn't want to send their kids to England or France because they were the occupiers. And Dr. Helmy was the hero of that. He's an Egyptian doctor. And that's why I personally kind of connected with him. And he went to school, medical school, didn't find a place to live, so he lived in the Jewish ghetto, like many Arabs. He didn't find a school to work at, a hospital to work in, so he worked in a Jewish hospital. So there was a lot of Arabs who lived with the ghetto. And actually the first director of the Berlin mosque was a Jewish convert who converted to Islam, and he was a gay activist. I'm telling you, this is like a crazy story.
Yeah.
And this is not a fiction story. This is actually like a non-fiction. It's written actually based on the statement, the documents of the Nazis and Gestapo. Dr. Helmy, he was in this hospital, and the Nazis came in and they killed and tortured and beat up the Jewish doctor, and they made him the head of his department. Then now he is surrounded by Nazi doctors. They didn't touch him because he was an Arab. There was kind of like a thing between Germany and the Arabs because they wanted to appease to them in order to have kind of a grassroots base in the Arab world where he wanted to go next. Mm-hmm. And this is why 1934, 1935, the racial laws of Nuremberg, they had a name change. First, they were called anti-Semitic. Then they changed into anti-Jewish because also Arabs were Semitic. So they wanted to appease the Arabs. Mm-hmm. Now, what happened to Dr. Helmy when that happened to him? He would go back to the ghetto and he would see the apartments next to him, the Jewish apartment, become more and more and more flooded with people because they were moving Jews and pushing them and putting them together, pushing them to the side. And each each apartment, instead of one family, it would have 3, 4, 6, 7 families. And he was there when at home, and he looked. He was there. This is where the people he grew up with, he lived with, and now he's seeing that kind of discrimination just because he's an Arab. And then he started to kind of like atone for, like, because he felt responsible because he wasn't treated the same way, and he started to go and treat Jewish people in their homes because they couldn't go to hospitals. And then one family gave them his daughter. It's like, this is Anna, save her. He took her, pretended that she's his niece, put a hijab around her, taught her Arabic, called her Nadia, my daughter's name, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And he hid her in plain sight for 7 years in front of the Nazis as his nurse. It's an incredible story. And then not just that, he went to prison, and then he went out and he formed with the Arab people that was in prison with him a network that saves 300 Jews. See that kind of story? This is the Jews that were living in the Arab world. I'm not saying that the Jews living in the Arab world was living like an incredible life. Of course, as like kind of a minority, they did not have like the full power of their full, advantages of the rule. That's normal. But we had this kind of a relationship before Israel was erected in 1948. And then, of course, everybody looked at Jews at the time as fifth column. And of course, the nationalistic regimes used that. And this is why what Biden said was very dangerous when he said, if there's no Israel, no Jew in the world will feel safe. You are the leader of the free world. You are the president of the United States. Do you mean that you're telling me that the Jews in your country, in the United States of America, are not safe? That is wrong on 2 levels. Number one, America historically and right now is more safe to Jews in America, in the world, than more than anybody. They are safer than the Jews in Israel. They never had pogroms or the Holocaust like Europe. They live here a good life, not perfect life, but they are better. Second of all, if you're the president and you're telling that a group of people will not feel safe unless there is a different one, you are already feeding into their fifth column. They're like, you're Russian, you come from there. And there is a group of laws in the Russian constitution that says that Russia will protect its citizens everywhere in the world. What happens if the president says like, oh, you're Russians, you're protected by your own country, you don't belong here? This is terrible.
Yeah, you're right. That's actually an indirect threat. It's like,
yes.
Even saying Muslims cannot feel safe in America or something like this. That means like that's a threat.
But what would a Jewish person in Beverly Hills or in Brooklyn feel if he hears that? You are already telling people you need to be loyal to Israel. I mean, Israel is a foreign country. I am sorry, but Israel is a foreign country. Israel is a client country that we sponsor, and should actually be responsible and held accountable for what they do.
You mentioned 1948, the Nakba, but before that, 41, 39, 41 to 45, the Holocaust. What do you do? What do you do with the Holocaust? Like what, how do you incorporate into the calculus of what's...
Oh, it's terrible.
Morality that leads up to the displacement of 700,000 Palestinians from the land. How do you work that out?
It is terrible, but like, I mean, what the systemic annihilation of Jewish people under the Nazi, that is like a carefully engineered, thoughtful, planned. It was terrible. It was like kind of like the human ingenuity put into like something that is very evil. But also, it is not just that happened. We need to remember that Otto Frank, the father of Anna Frank, has his refugee visa, rejected by the United States. There's a lot of people that were rejected by the United States, rejected by other European countries, and then they were pushed into Palestine. So you have to put yourself between, like, and the Arabs, okay, we're sitting here, okay.
Let's start with the historical story Youssef tells about Dr. Mohamed Helmy, because it's a remarkable and, if accurately represented, well-documented piece of history based on the book The Muslim and the Jew by Ronen Steinke. Helmy was an Egyptian doctor in Nazi Berlin who hid a Jewish family, including a young woman he presented as his niece, for years under Nazi surveillance, and later helped organize a network that protected dozens of Jewish people. Yad Vashem. Israel's official Holocaust Remembrance Institution has recognized Helmy as righteous among the nations, which lends real institutional credibility to the broader account. It's a genuinely powerful historical counterexample to any claim that Arab-Jewish relations have always been defined by inevitable hostility, and it's worth taking seriously on those terms. Now to the detention statistics cited about Palestinian children in Israeli military courts. Figures like 500 to 700 children detained annually, mostly for stone throwing, and specific percentages regarding handcuffing, blindfolding, and nighttime arrests. Organizations like Defense for Children International Palestine do publish detailed reporting on these practices, and some of these patterns have also been documented by other human rights organizations and even referenced in Israeli military court data itself regarding due process concerns for detained minors. That said, these are exactly the kind of specific figures worth checking directly against the original source reports and any Israeli government responses to them. Since advocacy organizations on any side of this conflict have a stake in how figures get framed, and the most responsible approach is verifying the specific numbers and methodology directly rather than accepting them from any single second-hand summary, including this one. On the core argument itself, that both sides need better leaders, framing can function as false balance when the actual power and circumstances between the two sides are dramatically asymmetric. That's a real and serious critique we're sitting with. There's a meaningful difference between calling for better leadership in the abstract and acknowledging that one party controls military force, borders, and infrastructure that the other doesn't. At the same time, I'd note that acknowledging power asymmetry doesn't automatically resolve every question about leadership and accountability on both sides. Youssef himself, in the same conversation, criticized Hamas's stated goals and specific actions, which suggests his point wasn't that only one side bears responsibility, but that the responsibility is unevenly distributed. Given the unequal ability of each side to act, that's a more precise argument than pure both sides are equally to blame framing would suggest, and it's worth representing accurately rather than flattening. On the Biden quote about Jewish safety worldwide being tied to Israel's existence, this is a genuinely interesting rhetorical critique worth sitting with on its own terms. Youssef's argument is that tying diaspora Jewish safety conditionally to a foreign government's military actions can inadvertently reinforce the very dual loyalty narrative that has historically been used to justify anti-Semitic persecution, framing Jewish people everywhere as extensions of a foreign state rather than full citizens of wherever they actually live. That's a thoughtful point about the unintended effects of well-meaning rhetoric, separate entirely from any question about Israeli government policy itself. Here's what I'd leave you with. The strongest parts of this conversation aren't really about picking a side in the conflict. They're about being precise regarding who has power to act and who doesn't, checking specific statistical claims against primary sources rather than accepting them from any single retelling, and recognizing that historical counter-narratives like the Helmy story complicate simple assumptions about inevitable conflict without erasing legitimate current grievances on any side. So tell me, do you think both sides framing an asymmetric conflicts like this one is inherently misleading, or can it still be a useful call for accountability applied to whoever holds power at any given moment? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more of these careful breakdowns that check the specifics before drawing conclusions, get subscribed because that's exactly what this channel is here for.